Trump has announced a 90-day pause on higher tariffs, but he's actually hiked the levies to China to 125%.
China showcased their 6th-gen stealth bomber, and it's so good to know that we are moving at a steady pace towards World War III. And I mean, at this point,
OpenAI announced the closure of a $40 billion funding round that's been led by SoftBank. Hello, everyone. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Evan.
We discussed all things tech here.
Yes.
And this week I wanted us to do things a little bit differently. So let's just start by talking about like the things that have piqued our interest in the last 2 weeks since we met and had a chat here. So for me, one of the things that I really found interesting was I saw a Twitter post by the CEO of Shopify, Tobi Lütke, or is it Tobi Lütke? And he was talking about how reflexive AI usage in that company is now a mandatory policy. It was quite interesting, actually. So he was talking about how before they even increase the headcount in the company, you must validate why you couldn't do that particular task with an AI or an autonomous agent. And then AI usage is going to be integrated in the performance reviews and peer reviews of the business. So making proficiency in using AI tools and chatbots like a company requirement. And the final thing is just basically talking about how it's now like a crazy multiplier for productivity, and it goes on and on. But I found that to be quite interesting because it really tied well.
It's the first time we're seeing actual
now implications in the real world and in business environments.
Or actual policy.
Exactly. It's no longer now a suggestion. It's now being implemented as part of, this is now how businesses are being run. And
if I got it right, it was meant to be private.
Which means
that's actually the best part. More serious.
So it was a leak of an internal memo from the business that now just caught fire, and he had to even come out and do a post. And what's crazy about it is that I also saw a bunch of CEOs like kind of falling in line because everyone had been thinking and doing this internally. But, it only took one person to, relay the dominoes. And so him coming out and saying that is quite an interesting, we did a prediction that in 2-3 years, this is going to be commonplace. Autonomous agents when you're talking about agentic AI. But seeing now that someone is actually making this company policy, I was just thinking about the impact on jobs, how many less people are going to be hired now? Yeah. Because you have to prove a use case as to why you couldn't use AI to see those tasks being done. I thought that was quite interesting, and that's one of the first things that piqued my interests over the last 2 weeks. So I don't know, you?
For me, what piqued my interest is there's a new standard, the GPMI, that's meant to combine HDMI, Thunderbolt, and the DisplayPort and make them obsolete.
Wait. HDMI, Thunderbolt,
and the DisplayPort.
So Thunderbolt is like USB-C, like the USB-C port.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you look at it,
but we didn't. And we just getting to a place where now USB-C is now the global standard. So why are we
that's
I'm just saying
we're moving too slow.
Okay,
I'm
saying global standard because Apple finally started adding USB-C.
Now that Apple has joined the bandwagon, suddenly it's maybe we need a new standard. So
okay. So I'm really interested in that.
So we have it's about I think 50 companies in China that are pushing to have that standard.
China.
We shall see. In my mind, I look at it and I'm like, when they say there were 13 competing standards, so we made one standard to rule them all, and now we have 14 competing standards.
14?
That's the vibe I get, yeah.
Oh, you mean now with the ports thing?
Yeah, so it's meant to be a standard to combine them, and yet I just think it's just going to be a new standard, just another standard.
Okay, let's. I don't know. I don't think it will catch fire. Mostly because it's come from 50 Chinese companies. Okay, let's be. No, that's a hot take. But actually, no, let's get into it. Mostly what happens is a lot of Western innovations catch fire, and then Chinese companies just run wild with it. So I don't know, man.
You're saying it can't happen. It can't happen in reverse.
I'm just saying it's so interesting to see it happen in reverse.
I don't have an opinion about.
Yeah, I don't know. It's argumentative.
No, the thing about standards is that it's very hard to tell which ones are adopted. Human beings are very weird in that we can say we have a new standard, but people will adopt very obsolete or very niche things and make that the standard, even though you might find that there's something else that clearly works. I mean, up until today, we keep talking about metric versus imperial. Like, we can't agree on one standard. So for me, I just think, let's wait and see.
Okay.
But
So
I'm happy with the
I
USB-C.
think I can wait and see for that. But that's quite interesting. I didn't even think about it. So for me, another thing that really caught my interest was an announcement. I don't even think it's not even an official close, but OpenAI announced the closure of a $40 billion funding round that's been led by SoftBank. I think SoftBank has committed.
How much have they committed?
30 B. And then I think the 10 is through like a consortium of other companies, probably like previous guys like Microsoft doing follow-ons, and I think Quatu and like a bunch of other companies, right?
But why should we care? Like, why is this different from any other?
The reason why
VC
number one,
backed?
this is like really, really big. First of all, this is like record breaking, like this is the largest private tech funding round at 40 billion, because their post-money valuation is now like at 300. If this round, 300 billion, that's just below SpaceX. And dude, this is a private company still. It's not public, it's not IPO'd, right? So in many sense of word, this is still hot air valuation. Like, this 40 billion could just like shower, bro. It could like go into the drains, if they don't live up to the valuation.
Do you think they live up to the valuation?
No, that's the more interesting thing. So Anthropic announced like a round of, I think, was it a $4.5 billion round or something? And they were arguably, Anthropic is arguably like OpenAI's anti-bet. Like in this race towards
the lift
AGI.
to the Uber.
Yeah, it's the lift to the Uber. So anyone who's betting with Anthropic is also betting with the belief that this AI, AGI race is not going to be like one person wins and takes it all, but more like multiple people. So that's what I think is quite interesting about it. And I'm finding it a very, I don't know, like I think the valuation is too big a risk to try and grow into. So I'm not bullish on it, to be honest. But after seeing what they did with the new features, they got like 500 million new users. 500 million users. I actually have to fact check that.
That can't be right.
No. It was like 1 million new users in an hour after they dropped the image gen thing. And bro, that thing just destroyed Midjourney. The studio, everyone was doing studio, is it Studio Ghibli or Ghibli? Studio Ghibli, but it's not even that, bro. Even any animation style, it's so good. But anyway, is that AGI? I doubt it. But let's see.
Sorry, I'm out of
but
doubt.
it's contingent. But the
AGI.
thing about this round as well is that it's very interesting because it has some unexpected details. It's conditional. They really haven't closed the money until they become like an okay company, because we all know about, we can do a deep dive in a later episode or something, but they have a very weird company structure. So until they fully transition to become like a for-profit company, is when SoftBank will actually inject that 30. And there's going to be like a 10 billion cut if they don't achieve certain milestones. So it's quite interesting. I don't think it's like...
There's strings attached.
Yeah,
it's
there's
not just
so
a
many
typical run-of-the-mill
There's a bunch of layers of complexity in that deal. But anyway, still, 40 billion, I think they're probably signaling to Anthropic or competitors, that our raise is basically 2/3 of your whole valuation. Bro, we could buy your company. Bro, it's just so much fun. Though.
You guys are a research department.
Yeah, man. You guys you're an arm.
I think it just speaks to we talk about second move advantage, but first move advantage is when you strike it right.
It's good.
ChatGPT has become synonymous with AI.
Yeah.
And so they're just carrying it's like they're carrying the hopes of the entire industry in their valuation.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wait and see if, they'll still be riding that high, in the years to come. But for now, they're doing good. For me, another story that stuck out to me was China showcased their 6th gen stealth bomber.
Hey, bro, you've been on
Amid
some
air
China
trade,
vibes.
amid air trade eruption. Sorry, amid the trade tensions, and it's so good to know that we are moving at a steady pace towards World War III. And I mean, at this point,
wait, what?
like there are many things that are not certain in this world. But all is certain. Like this, like now you know if should that day come, the best you can hope for is the quick release. That's gonna be fast. But anyway, I mean, there's tensions, and I'm usually interested in like war technology because, in a sense, I think they represent a kind of innovation that comes, let me sort of desperation, because your success is literally measured through how much destruction you can cause. And a lot of technology, a lot of innovation is driven by war. And so to hear that they have a cell phone, I mean, the technology I find it interesting, but the implications of that, well, we'll find out soon,
Okay.
won't we?
I mean, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. One of the most seismic pieces of news happened over the last 2 weeks, and it's not even directly tech, but it affects tech. So I'm gonna wear my economics hat, be Milton Friedman Mulinda for like 2 seconds here, and let's just get into it. Like just get into a little bit of what's happened, especially with the April 2025 tariffs that Trump has just implemented. So his administration has implemented like a sweeping set of tariffs that have dramatically escalated like global trade tensions, right? And so today he wanted us to kind of get into it. Like, what are these tariffs? Who are the guys who are most affected? Like, what are the goals behind it? Like, why would you do that kind of thing?
And I heard that they're not actually accurate, those numbers.
Yes. So let's start,
please help us there.
Yeah, let's start by even explaining what these tariffs are. So early this month, like that's right now it's like last week, right? So the administration dropped a massive economic bombshell. They announced tariffs up to 104% for countries like China, Chinese imports, and significant tariffs on dozens of other countries like Vietnam, and Thailand. I think for Vietnam and Thailand, it's but looking at north of 50 or just under 50%, yeah? And even some close allies. So this was like a blanket tariff, and the rationale behind it was to fix like a bunch of trading balances between these countries who need to now start buying and forcing them to buy more American.
Pause. What is a trading balance?
So now let's talk about trading balance. Trading balance is basically the surplus of, let's say you're country A, or you're country Evans and I'm country Dom, and we trade with each other, and I'm always buying more from you than you are buying from me. So we're literally operating on a trade deficit, right? There's a surplus of trades that I import from you than you import from me, right? And so the reason why that's a big thing, the rationale behind it would be, now I want to protect companies in my country that do businesses similar to the companies in your country that I'm heavily buying from. So I import I levy like taxes on the goods that I'm importing from your side, with the hope of, one, it can be like a protectionist measure to protect like companies that are in my country to start producing, or to have like a fair fighting chance against companies in your country that I import from. It could be also like as a strategic tool for negotiations, which many people are touting that's kind of probably the rationale, where I want to force you to like a negotiation table. Because if we have a trade deficit, then clearly I'm in a higher, like I'm the one with the higher leverage.
You have leverage.
The both of us, right? You need me more than need you, right? So that's kind of the argument. And so the way they did this math, and a lot of people are touting it to be false and wrong and stuff, is that these guys basically just looked at the trade deficit between them and other countries, and then look at the percentage, the difference between the exports and imports versus a particular country over the imports, and then you come up with like a particular figure, and then you impose like tariffs against that particular number. I think that's kind of the rough math, but we're gonna I'll show how.
And let me ask, why should we expect that there should be no trade deficit between two countries? If you assume that, let's say, you buy more from me than I buy from you, could it be that I just don't make a lot of stuff?
No, the goal here is not to achieve neutrality. The goal here is for leverage and for power. So I always expect a situation where there's always a trade imbalance between two countries, because one is maybe at a higher economic standing. So the point is, and the thing about Trump is, one, first of all, this is one of the things he promised on his like campaign trail. So he's actually just doing, the funny thing is that it's big global news, but it's because he did it first, like poorly, and then he rolled it back in the first term that he had. But now this one, it's like more like, now this is now sweeping. It's affecting like, I think around 180 countries, right?
Which is
basically
really the whole world.
Basically the whole world at this point, right? And he's kind of doubling down on it, right? So the thing is, you force chips to kind of fall in your favor with regards to trying to levy high tariffs when you're the one with the trade surplus. Okay, is it a surplus? Or when you're the one importing more from the other country. So it's not a situation of trying to bring a neutrality, but it's more of a situation of trying to gain the upper hand. Either you want to push the guys who are exporting into your country to set up shop internally, and this has already happened, by the way. There's been like already like a flywheel of activities and events that have happened, like in Apple's like supply chain. A bunch of manufacturing guys like Micron, the guys who do semiconductors, are like even getting into like combined agreements with countries like Japan to ramp up on their investment for cheap manufacturing companies like in the US and in different places. So for Trump, it's a win because you kind of force them, you make it cheap to basically produce within the country. And then it's also like a good thing in terms of like strategic industry.
But
that's how
let me ask also,
traditionally implemented.
I think we've seen other countries also put in place counter tariffs.
Yes.
Most of them, I think, I believe, are trying to negotiate, are speaking to the White House to negotiate. But we have other countries like China having their own reciprocal tariffs. So thinking like game theory, what happens when everyone is setting up their own tariffs?
Now, that is actually the thing that I was thinking about, because at the end of the day, we're now kind of getting into a game of game theory. And I was thinking about it, tariffs can be like a tactical strike for the short term. But long-term protectionist measures like build a lot of economic walls that make a country trapped inside. So you can protect like local jobs today, but it's usually at the risk of like, consumer pain. Like let's say consumers in your country don't have the best goods that they can buy with the money that they have. They can have like a lot of global backlash, which is what is happening with guys like China. I think the EU also came out with a statement kind of trying to assume like a stance where we'll also increase tariffs on certain American goods, but we're ready to negotiate because we also have leverage over you, which is kind of argumentative. This is basically the art of the deal, right?
Yeah.
And it may also lead to slower growth, to be honest, because if everyone now, again, assuming game theory holds, right? I give you like a commensurate response to what you've done to me. I will set up tariffs and then I will force all production to be either I look for other markets or have to sell my products within, right? And so basically it's like there's pros and cons to it and it can backfire, but it usually backfires if there's no bigger end game. Like if there's no 3D chess move to it, like that's when now the tariffs are gonna hurt. But yeah, it's so interesting because I was thinking about it in the context of Africa, and we're actually not big net exporters in the US. So we're the ones who stand to suffer the most from blanket tariffs because there's almost always a trade imbalance between African states that are exporting to the US. I'm talking cocoa.
Does the US buy more from African countries than it does selling to African countries?
Yes, it does. So when you break it down into like the biggest exporters into the US, guys who are doing like the cocoa industry, I think there was a report as well on Madagascar. I've forgotten exactly what it was, but
and Lesotho,
like they I think it's to do with like textile manufacturing or I don't know if it's agricultural stuff or textile stuff. But yeah, basically, if you're a net manufacturing exporter in the US, it depends really on how well your leadership can be able to leverage a deal to kind of
with the White House,
whisk itself outside of the tariffs. But you see, I think for the US, in my opinion, this is a 3D chess move to first of all target like very leading and let's say very leading and high impact verticals, like, technology, in the technology space and electronics, because semiconductors are a big deal because of chip manufacturing, because of AI stuff. I think for retailers, I think for farmers, I think for like a lot of these manufacturing gigs that are, let's say, textile based, like it's easy to kind of weave in deals. But I would see how this works well for like a state like the US, but it basically hurts and puts everyone to the drawing table and to the negotiating table if you're a net exporter to the US. And if it basically like takes in a huge chunk of your export country portfolio. So yeah, so that's the interesting thing about it.
So where do you see it going? Like, what do you think will be the majority response?
So there are either a couple of things that could play out here. If the end game here is to strike deals with countries, I see there being like a humongous global supply chain shift for the most critical verticals. So that's semiconductors. I think it's a win for countries like us if we need to import heavily from countries like China. Like if they're forced to ramp up their sales and their exports into markets that they were ignoring, right?
But just because there's a trade deficit just because there are tariffs doesn't mean that there'll be new demand for your products in other places.
Oh, fair. That's actually a fair argument. But I think there'll be
if they
a
can't
bigger focus.
If they can't sell the semiconductors to US, do you think they're going to sell them to Kenya?
But I'm thinking about it in the context of things like automotive industries.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like the majority of cars are still being bought in the US.
Yeah.
So many automotive manufacturers, and I think even a part of like the biggest like negotiation for the EU bloc would probably be negotiating for the Volkswagens and the Mercedeses to be able to get like better deals so that they can at least subsidize tariffs on cars coming into the US. If not, like they may need to look to Australia, Africa, and
we are finally gonna get new cars.
We finally get the EVs that we want, except that BYD. Anyway, but hey,
if tariffs is what it takes for us to get,
but that's automotive. I think it's gonna be more nuanced when you have to start looking at like specific verticals, right? For the semiconductor space, I think. I seriously doubt, because you see, there's a lot of retaliatory like means. Like China is also importing like expensive tariffs on US imports, so it's gonna like lead to a general slowdown of like economic growth, which I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it's just a slowdown. Because if you don't have available to you the cheapest chips from, let's say, NVIDIA, and you are like TSMC who needs the designs from NVIDIA or something, I don't know, or you're the Chinese chip manufacturer or Foxconn or whoever who does like chip manufacturing in China, if you don't have access to the cheapest chips, you also kind of drive up the cost, because the surcharge of tariffs has to be passed down the value chain, right?
Yeah,
it has to go back down either to the consumers.
Yeah, because I was also wondering, how does it affect? How does it affect? Industries are very intertwined. Where your chips are coming from Taiwan, your metro is coming from I don't know where.
Your screen is coming from
South Korea. So how does that come into play when you are basically, let's say for example, you have your plant. Let's say you move your plant to US, but you are importing goods from other countries. So will they still be subject to those tariffs?
So no, now that's where the leverage and the negotiation capacity comes in, right? So if you levy tariffs to let's say a Micron or a TSMC, TSMC now is forced to set up a plant, because instead of costing 10% more, now their goods cost 50% more, right? So the net cost of just like having a fab factory, let's say somewhere in Texas, just basically makes TSMC 10% more expensive instead of being 50% more expensive if they have to export chips into the US. So now,
but you can't have the entire
stack
value chain. Yeah.
You can actually. No, that's the okay.
Or
I'm saying like the end game now.
It might be too costly.
Yeah, it might be too costly to go the tariffs route instead of like having to set up shop there. And even if it's just to meet the demand in the US, because you see, the reason why Trump can do this is because he knows he's running literally an importation surplus against most of these countries.
He has leverage.
Like if you're to do even if you're to do game theory and you have to, like levy back like expensive tariffs on me, I know I still import more than you.
So I suffer more.
You suffer more, and I can hold it out more longer than you. So it's basically it's a really interesting forcing function.
And I also might be wrong, but I think I was reading somewhere where they were stating that a lot of goods even made in the US are consumed in the US. So they'll be able to fare it much better than many countries who rely on export.
And that's another interesting text.
Specifically to the US.
To the US. The other thing that I was actually thinking about is at second order effect, maybe it's like inflation. Like, because the cost of goods, generally speaking, if all our countries are like, heavily walled gardens, each producing and consuming within, like you don't get the best cost for the good. So ultimately, you're going to be paying more for the same goods. You're going to be paying more for the same phone. You're going to be paying more for the same car. Like I think I was looking at an effect where for Canada, already the cost of like US manufactured cars, because they've had to retaliate, is already expensive by an order of like 15-20%. So the same, I don't know, Kia truck or whatever, or the Ford Raptor that you are buying is now...
So Honda is just the Kias and Toyotas of the world are smiling.
Like Africans, we should understand it the most. Think about it. Like we pay almost 100% custom duty for most cars that we import. And that are like, I don't know, 7 to 14
years old.
Like, it doesn't make sense, man. So yeah, that is tariffs.
We shall see.
Very interesting, but it's a developing story. We'll obviously be tracking how it plays out. And will countries cave, like will these deals get done? Or are we heading into like a prolonged global trade war? And are we like collateral damage for...
We are always collateral damage.
Interesting. Yeah, actually.
Sad, but it's true.
Yeah.
We shall see.
But anyway.
News just in.
Yeah, news just in as we're talking about tariffs. So we just found out that Trump has announced a 90-day pause on higher tariffs, but he's actually hiked the levies to China to 125%. And this is a 90-day pause. So this is actually very much a developing story, very interesting. And of course, the markets are already soaring again immediately after. And there'll also be a universal tariff of 10% on all countries' goods, except for China. So this is very much, again, a developing story. And it's kind of clear now, this was definitely just protectionist measures against China, but never really. I mean, I know the EU, there's a lot of pressure, and also the market pressure has probably pushed Trump to put a pause on this. I don't know. Is he working it back again already after 1 week of, heat? It's very interesting.
We shall see.
Tracking.
I have no comment on this. It's hard to predict or to have an opinion on something like that.
It's developing.
So
yeah, but
do let us know what you think. What I'd want to know about this tariff and putting a pause on it, is it planned or is it?
I think
reaction.
I think it's, first of all, I think
because I don't think in my mind I tend to think it's not a reaction. I think that perhaps he was hoping to get a reaction and then
premeditated. No, but I think it's 1,000% premeditated. It's 1,000% something that he's spoken about.
He knew he was going to roll back.
He knew he was going to do it. He knew he was going to get like a massive response, either through deals or doubling down. And China retaliated, and now he's doubled down even more and released tariffs or put pauses on tariffs from every other country except for China. So this is quite clearly a trade war, like in the making, So this is very interesting. Again, are we gonna be collateral damage or are we gonna be the winners out of this? I can't wait to see how it goes.
So I also came across a story that I found interesting and worth diving into.
Okay.
Now I have there's something that always fascinates me about, let me say it's like nature, but in the business sense. You see how in nature you find that you can find there are two animals that dominate, and so all the other animals have to kind of adapt in a very weird way. And so you look at a cheetah and like, you should be strong, and but instead it has used all its adaptations to just being fast because it cannot keep up with taking on the lion or
in terms of strength and stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of see the same thing happening in business, where you find that you'll have one or two very dominant organizations that have just completely dominated the market, and so everyone else who has to survive and has to thrive will end up making very weird adaptations that make it very interesting to look at the business, because you'll be like,
because now
this is the industry standard,
and you kind of have to carve your niche.
But it becomes so interesting in how they go about there, because they will tend to back the trend when it comes to in industry standards.
Okay.
And so
interesting.
A few examples for me would be like, for example, Linux,
like the subsystem,
the operating system.
Of course, we had like Mac versus Windows.
Yes, like we have Mac, Windows, and they look, when you compare the two, they tend to just be almost look like a copy of each other. And then you have Linux, which is like just so different.
All things.
Yes, but it's really big in its own right. You look, I think I'd argue Tesla was different in that sense when they came into the electric market, where everyone else, this is how they're.
It's VW versus Toyota.
And these guys are like, we are Tesla and we make cars that look like appliances. So it was so interesting.
We make cars that look like, hey bro, who's that?
I mean, you've seen the inside of a Tesla. So
no.
You can't argue that.
I will not go there, bro. That is Japanese, top tier Japanese engineering. Anyway,
Yeah, and for the purpose of this video, Nintendo.
Okay.
This week they released the Nintendo Switch 2.
I saw that actually. Like
And
the pocket gaming.
It has already been impacted by the tariffs. But when I saw that news, it just got me thinking, if I ask someone which are the biggest consoles in the world,
PlayStation or Xbox.
Everyone will tell you PlayStation, Xbox.
Okay.
Or maybe it's a more local thing, because I know Nintendos aren't necessarily big here in Kenya.
Well, sweet.
But even in a general term, or in a global sense, and even when you look at the companies, it's not an apples to apples comparison, because PlayStation is under Sony, and I mean Xbox is under Microsoft. So we can't compare the size of the companies with regards to like their market value. But when the general zeitgeist is that when you talk about gaming, when you talk about consoles, are you playing Xbox
or PlayStation? You're an Xbox guy, I'm a PlayStation guy.
But I think when you look under the hood and see and really analyze Nintendo, we find a very interesting story. So one, these guys are older than both. I think they're for sure older than
they're older than PlayStation for sure.
Yes.
Sony,
and older than Microsoft, because they've been here since 1886.
86. Oh, okay, 86. Oh man, this
1886. But they were
18,
not 19.
18. Hey, bro, what are they doing at 18?
They were doing cards.
They were making cards. Rockefeller days or something. Like
they were making playing cards. If I'm not wrong.
Okay.
And they've metamorphosed. They've done so many things. They did strollers. They had a taxi company at some point. Basically, they were just jumping in and out of, trying to find their footing until they finally found video games as their.
That's circa 79 thereabout, 79 to 88 there.
I think so.
Because I remember Nintendo was like the biggest gaming company even before PlayStation.
Before PlayStation. Yeah. So they've gone through this kind of ebbing and flowing where they're on the throne, then they dethrone, then they come back again.
Yeah, but it used to be Nintendo versus PlayStation.
Nintendo versus PlayStation.
When
right
PlayStation
now, when you look
up.
at consoles, the highest selling consoles is still PlayStation.
I think we argued about this, by the way. You remember?
2 is the most. But right under them is the Nintendo Wii.
Oh, Wii. Oh, the Nintendo Wii.
Yes. And they still have a plethora of other high-selling consoles. And so I wanted to dig into the ways that they are interesting. And I'm hoping to also do for future videos other companies that tend to be this kind of...
just the stealth number 3.
Yes.
They're just doing a lot of interesting things.
And really when you think about it, they're a very big company. It's just that you can't put them next to a Microsoft and still say that they're big.
Okay.
But it's so interesting to see how they got there. So I think one of the reasons that got them there for me is the willingness to innovate. Where if I show you PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3.
Now we're in 5.
They basically just look like the same version.
Yeah.
It's an evolution, not a revolution.
No, I mean, between PlayStation 4 and 5, the biggest leap is like the design.
Yes.
The design looks very...
The form factor
the
has
form factor.
stayed
Yeah, the form
same.
factor is roughly the same.
Yes.
It's console, put in a disc,
Yes.
like, it's the same.
But Nintendo started with consoles. They went to the Wii, which is some handheld. These guys were trying out VR in 1995.
Okay.
It was a failure, but they were trying it nonetheless.
You have to swing for the fences.
Yes.
Right?
And at the same time, the Wii being the highest selling unit sold 101 million units. So they took wild swings.
What does that look like in terms of like volumes and scales? Is that like a lot compared to...
That's the highest selling product ever. Yeah.
Even more than the PlayStations?
No, PlayStation I believe is at about 75.
So 101 is pretty...
But again, we're looking at a number 3 company, not...
Okay, fair enough.
But this is pulling punches at the same rate as the number 1 and 2, was being much smaller.
This is 101 total million sales of like Wii units. Okay.
And so it was interesting to me that they did a lot of innovating where I think they were not, perhaps it's owing to their history, but they're not afraid to take risks. So they did the typical console form factor. They've done the stick. Now they're big on the handheld.
The Switch.
And they doubled, the Switch.
And what's interesting about that is that I know PlayStation has tried its hand.
Yes, with the PS
Portable
and the Vita.
And the Vita.
Yes.
And they have been epic failures. Like they've not been able to replicate.
Yeah.
So I still don't understand how people are still buying Nintendo Switches. Like
the second recipe that I think perhaps will answer the question is that they have a lot of vertical integration. They publish about 50% of the games that are on their consoles. So what I did...
so they own the games?
They own a lot of the games.
That's very interesting.
What I did, I pulled up the list of the biggest gaming franchise, the top 10, and looked at which platforms you can play them on. So there's Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, FIFA, Super Mario, Pokemon, Legend of Zelda, Red Dead Redemption, Mario Kart, and PUBG.
Okay. You're saying you pulled up the highest selling games, not the
franchise.
No, franchises.
The franchise.
Okay. So
the titles.
DR and Grand Theft Auto, that's one studio.
That's one studio. Yeah, but I'm not even interested in who makes the games. I'm just interested where can I play them.
Okay.
Of this top 10, 5 of them are only playable on Nintendo.
Which ones are those?
Super Mario, Pokemon, Legend of Zelda, and
okay, that's actually quite interesting.
So, whilst the other ones are interplayable between Xbox
and PlayStation. They're cross-platform.
Yes. So, Xbox and PlayStation are platforms. Nintendo is seeing itself just as much as a publisher as it's
an ecosystem.
Their experience isn't the console. It's the combination of the console and the game. So they're having this vertical integration. I think that has been critical to their success because if you can play any of the games in any of the other consoles, why would you need to buy a Nintendo?
Yeah, but that's a very interesting argument because it's not like the PlayStations and the Xbox have not tried to adopt that strategy. So it just hasn't worked for them, right?
They have exclusives that they try to ship.
Specifically for their platform, right?
Yes, where you can only play this game on their platform, but the exclusive are not even the largest franchises.
Yeah, but so you see, isn't that like the point, right? Because it's a strategy that hasn't worked. Because I remember when Microsoft did the Xbox acquisition, and then they did the One Pass thing. The whole goal was to make their games like
when Microsoft did that,
like when Microsoft bought Xbox, like No. Like when they did the One Pass thing and they were trying to make all the games like
Microsoft
platform. It's because they realized like on a business fundamental level, it doesn't make sense to just build a walled garden in terms of just having like one ecosystem. Do you think like Nintendo would be much bigger, for instance, if Super Mario was cross-platform, if Super Mario was well adapted for Xbox or PlayStation?
It's good that you said that because they had a history where I think they saw what that would do to their brands. Where for them, it's not just the console that they're selling; it's the experience of the console and the games. So Sega, which was a big competitor,
at the time, Sega
had shifted towards not being more game focused, and that led to the demise. that later on
basically killed them.
And so I think they saw the writing on the wall where they said, look, if you're going to think about us, you cannot divorce our hardware and our software. And in fact, that also shows in the sales where they do like a 47 to 53%, where 47 is hardware sales, 53 is through the software. So they make more money from software, but they're more balanced as opposed to a Microsoft that will do, I think, a 20-80.
Yeah, where the console split is like 20%.
Yes. And again, these are adaptations that the other big companies perhaps would not take, but because they're in this position where they're kind of squeezed and they've had to have different adaptations where we look at it and think this is not the industry standard, but it really makes so much sense for them given their current position.
So can I just like parallel that to like the Netflix approach or something? Like when Netflix used to license a lot of content from external studios until around circa 2013 when everyone was
shifted towards having their own,
and now they were like now became like we're as much the distributor as we are the publisher of the content, and that's when now they became,
and that gives them the moat
that they have. So basically you're saying Nintendo's game, but you see like Nintendo is like more protectionist than Netflix. I can still have external, like is it like for Nintendo's platforms can I like publish external games on it?
There are third-party developers. Yes, they'll still let. But for them, again, it's the experience, and that actually leads me to the third point where they have a very strong focus on their brand or the experience, where a lot of games lean towards the realism and going towards the graphics and having as many games playable on your platform. Nintendo's have opted for the different approach where for them it's really about the game, the experience of the game. I mean, we really talk about Super Mario, a game we played as kids and people are still playing now. So for them, they realize that they can still craft a different experience. Like I would term them as the Wes Anderson.
The Wes Anderson.
The Wes Anderson of game publishers because their DNA is so specific that you cannot see. One moment you just see it, you know
this is a Nintendo game.
Yes,
you can't mistake it.
Yes, and I think that is what is paying off for them. And then finally, and I believe this was I don't know if it was the CEO who said, but they also mentioned that they saw the market and realized that they don't want to be in a red ocean, equal to the blue ocean strategy. So they saw, hey, we're going to define our own market. People are going big on these consoles. The PlayStations and the Xboxes. Yeah. So they said, you know what, us will double down on the handhelds. The Nintendo Switch is one of the most successful products. And the Switch 2 is probably geared to be extremely successful.
We're on Switch 3, right?
Switch 2.
It's Switch 2.
We're on Switch 2. They also took a risk by making the Nintendo
Wii
U. The Nintendo Wii U, which was like their initial Switch. And so they kind of say that they're not going to try to compete with PlayStation at being a PlayStation. They're going to compete with PlayStation at being Nintendo. And that is what has worked for them.
That's quite interesting.
So looking in future...
Basically carving out their own...
Yes, they've carved
out their own niche.
They're not going to compete on the same metrics that you would judge a PlayStation. Because they can't win on this.
But they could. If
they would probably lose because once you judge them on their competitors' metrics, they can't compete.
It doesn't go without the publishing games. And okay.
And so in future, I mean, they're still doubling down on their handhelds. They, like we said, they've just released the Switch 2. But it's also becoming a red ocean. As you know, we've seen breakout successes like the Steam Deck and big manufacturers such as Asus. Legion is now also
there's so many guys now doing handhelds.
So I believe they're in a position where they'll have to decide on how to, can I say, really enforce their brand even more, like dig deeper into their brands. They have always shied away from mobile gaming, and I believe they'll continue to do so. They're also very litigious because they view these games and this IP as an extension of their IP. So people getting corporate strikes,
it's
you can't do videos with their content. They're very specific again because they see as the console and the software as being married together to create the product offering that is Nintendo.
Pretty much what any big brand would do to protect their own mode. Okay, makes sense. I have one important question. Would you buy or will you buy a Nintendo Switch after gassing it like that?
Sadly, I'm already on the biggest gaming platform there is. Android.
PlayStation. Oh, sorry.
Mobile gaming is
anyway.
I don't game on the go. I don't know if that interests me per se. I've never played the game, so perhaps if I sampled one, I'd be interested.
Yeah,
right now, I'm content just playing my Xbox and the few games that I bought. So we shall see.
So you're still playing the number 2. But anyway, it's okay.
To be honest, at this point, I actually think Xbox is the number 3. But it wouldn't fit my title.
Xbox is just to say, it's been blown out of the water, bro.
But
console sales,
do let us know if there are other companies that you think are interesting. In a weird way. Not interesting in that they make money, but in a weird way they have adapted and would like to
I'm just
cover
happy
them.
that all the heat from all the gamers or anything, it should just be directed at you. Anyway, otherwise, that was good.
Thank you for joining the show. Please like, subscribe, share. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Discord, and wherever else you get your podcast.
Discord. Yeah, we should be in Discord.
Wherever else you get your podcast.
Wherever you get.
We shall see you on the next one.
All right.